I never thought I would be standing on my own front lawn watching my in-laws throw my clothes and possessions like garbage. My wife Sarah stood silently by their side, her eyes avoiding mine. Their voices echoed through the neighborhood as they screamed for me to leave what they called their daughter's house. What these entitled people did not know was that the deed was solely in my name. I smiled as I dialed 911. Before we dive into this story, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button. Growing up in a lower middle-class family in Michigan taught me the value of hard work and perseverance. My parents worked multiple jobs to keep food on the table, but college seemed like a distant dream. I was determined to create a different future for myself, so I studied relentlessly, earning scholarships that paid my way through college. Even then, I worked part-time jobs to cover living expenses, sometimes sleeping only 4 hours a night between classes and shifts. After graduation, I landed a job as a software engineer at a growing tech startup. While my college friends splurged on luxury apartments and new cars, I lived frugally, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates and driving my old college car. Every month I put half my salary into savings and investments. My coworkers teased me for bringing homemade lunches and declining expensive social outings, but I had my eyes on a bigger prize: financial independence. By 28, I had been promoted 3 times, and my investments were performing well. The scrawny kid from Michigan, who once worried about affording textbooks, was now leading a team of developers at one of the fastest-growing companies in the industry. Still, I maintained my humble lifestyle, understanding that true wealth comes from saving, not earning. That spring, I represented my company at a charity gala, supporting education for underprivileged children. The irony was not lost on me as I adjusted my rented tuxedo in a ballroom filled with people who had never known financial struggle. That was when I saw her, Sarah Wilson, confidently working the room in a stunning blue gown. She was the event organizer, daughter of Douglas and Margaret Wilson, well-known real estate developers in our city. Our worlds could not have been more different, but when our eyes met across that crowded room, something clicked. I gathered my courage and approached her, expecting to be politely dismissed. Instead, she smiled warmly and engaged me in genuine conversation about the charity work. No mention of her family wealth or my company position, just 2 people connecting over shared values. Sarah was nothing like I expected a wealthy heiress to be. She was thoughtful, passionate about education reform, and surprisingly down to earth. When I asked for her number at the end of the night, she gave it without hesitation. Our first date was the following weekend. I took her to my favorite local diner, rather than an upscale restaurant, half expecting her to be disappointed. Instead, she declared the pancakes the best she had ever tasted. Our romance moved quickly. Within 6 months, we were spending every weekend together. I met her parents at a formal dinner at their mansion, in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city. Douglas Wilson was a tall, imposing man, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a firm handshake that lasted a second too long. Margaret Wilson was elegant and reserved, her eyes constantly evaluating me behind her pleasant smile. They were cordial but cool, asking pointed questions about my background, education, and career prospects. "Software engineering is interesting," Douglas commented during dinner, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. Though I always thought real estate was where true generational wealth is built. "Right, darling." He looked at Sarah, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Despite their subtle disapproval, Sarah and I grew closer. When I proposed 8 months after we met, she accepted immediately, tears of joy streaming down her face. Her parents were less enthusiastic. They insisted on an elaborate wedding with hundreds of guests, most of whom would be their business associates and social connections. I had envisioned something small and intimate, but seeing how torn Sarah was between our wishes, I compromised. We had a moderately sized wedding at a historic hotel, blending some of my simple preferences with the formality her parents demanded. Throughout our engagement, I had been working on a secret project. For 3 years before meeting Sarah, I had been saving for a house. Now, with my partner by my side, I was ready to find our perfect home. We spent weekends visiting open houses with Sarah, unaware that I was not just dreaming but actively planning to buy. After seeing dozens of properties, we founded a beautiful colonial-style home in an upscale neighborhood. It had character and history, but needed updates, making it more affordable than the turnkey mansions nearby. When Sarah gushed about how perfect it would be someday, I knew it was the one. My mentor at work, James, had gone through a difficult divorce years earlier and suggested I purchase the house in only my name as a financial protection measure. Hope for the best, plan for the worst, he advised. Though I trusted Sarah completely, the practical side of me saw the wisdom in this approach, especially given her parents' apparent distrust of me. The day I signed the papers, a strange mixture of pride and guilt washed over me. I was now a homeowner, but I was keeping a secret from my wife. 2 weeks after our honeymoon, I blindfolded Sarah and drove her to our new house. When I removed the blindfold and handed her the keys, she stood speechless, tears forming in her eyes. "Is this ours?" she whispered, looking from the house to me and back again. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lambert," I replied, picking her up and carrying her across the threshold. That first year of marriage was everything I had hoped for. We spent weekends painting walls and refinishing hardwood floors, transforming the house into our home. Sarah had an eye for design that complemented my practical nature. We hosted dinner parties for friends, planted a garden in the backyard, and talked about which bedroom would make the perfect nursery someday. I made genuine attempts to bond with my in-laws, bringing thoughtful gifts when they visited and asking interested questions about their business ventures. Douglas would respond with brief technical answers, before changing the subject to what he called missed opportunities in my career path. Margaret would accept my gifts with a tight smile before pointing out something in our home that could be improved. "These curtains are rather basic, do not you think?" she would say to Sarah, as if I was not standing right there. "I know an excellent designer who could help elevate this space." Their visits became more frequent and increasingly uncomfortable. They would arrive unannounced, using the excuse that they were in the neighborhood. Douglas would walk through our home like a property inspector, pointing out minor flaws and suggesting expensive renovations. Margaret would rearrange our furniture while I was at work, claiming she was just helping Sarah make the space more functional. One evening I came home early and overheard them in the kitchen with Sarah. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop, until I heard my name. "Adam is a nice enough young man," Douglas was saying, "but darling, you married down. Someone with your background could have had anyone, a doctor, a lawyer, even the Thompson boy, who runs his family investment firm." "Your father is right," Margaret added. "We just worry that Adam does not understand our lifestyle. The way he flinches at the price of quality things, it is concerning." I expected Sarah to defend me, but her response sent a chill through me. "I know you want what is best for me," she said softly. "Sometimes I wonder if we rushed into things." Despite this painful revelation, I remained optimistic that I could eventually win them over. After all, I loved their daughter and was providing her with a good life. Surely they would see that with time. I doubled my efforts, bringing Douglas cigars from his favorite shop and getting tickets to the symphony for Margaret. I listened attentively to their stories and never contradicted them, even when they were clearly wrong about something. Sarah seemed torn between her husband and her parents. Sometimes she would defend me when they became too critical, but increasingly she deferred to their opinions. After lengthy private phone calls with her mother, she would suddenly find fault with things she had previously loved about our home or lifestyle. The first major holiday we hosted in our home was Thanksgiving. I spent days preparing, wanting everything to be perfect. Sarah and I cooked together, following her family recipes alongside a few from my own traditions. The morning of the celebration, I was up at 5:30 a.m., putting the turkey in the oven and setting the table with our best dishes. When Douglas and Margaret arrived, they brought extravagant and unnecessary gifts, an imported crystal decanter to replace our inadequate water pitcher hand-painted serving platters from Italy because ours were too common. Each gift felt less like a kindness and more like a criticism. Throughout dinner, Douglas questioned my career choices. "You know, Adam, I have connections at Westridge Financial. They are always looking for bright young men to groom for management. The starting salary would be twice what you are making now." "Thank you, sir, but I am actually very happy with my current position," I replied politely. "We are developing some innovative technologies that could revolutionize." Yes, he interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "But at the end of the day, you want to be where the real money is, not tinkering with computers all day." After dinner, while Sarah and I were cleaning up in the kitchen, I noticed Margaret had disappeared. I found her in our living room rearranging our furniture and decor. This layout is much more sophisticated, she declared when she saw me watching. The way you had it was blocking the natural flow of energy in the room. I bit my tongue and thanked her, remembering how important she was to Sarah. But later that night, I overheard a conversation that cut deep. Honestly, Sarah Margaret was saying in a hushed tone from the guest bedroom, "You could have done so much better. He is nice enough, but so ordinary. Not the kind of man we imagined for you at all." "He works hard," Mom Sarah replied weakly. "Working hard is what the help does." Douglas joined in. "Strategic thinking and connections are what build real success. I worry he will hold you back from the life you deserve." I waited for Sarah to defend me more vigorously. She did not. After that visit, I noticed subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. After lengthy private calls with her parents, she became more critical of our home, our lifestyle, and even my clothes. She began making expensive purchases, without discussion, designer furniture, art pieces, that cost more than my first car memberships, to exclusive clubs where her parents socialized. When I gently raised concerns about our budget, she grew defensive. "My parents are right, you just do not understand quality and its value. This is how people like us live. People like us." The phrase stung. When had I become excluded from that category? The financial tensions grew when Douglas offered to help with the mortgage during another unannounced visit. "No young couple should struggle with payments when family can assist," he said magnanimously. "Actually, we do not have mortgage issues," I replied carefully, not revealing that I owned the house outright. "But thank you for the offer." Douglas looked surprised, then suspicious. "Well, the offer stands. Everyone needs help sometimes, son." Soon after, I discovered Sarah had begun hiding purchases from me, having packages delivered to her office or her parents' house. Credit card statements revealed spending that far exceeded our agreed budget. When confronted, she accused me of being controlling and miserly. The real shock came when I returned home early one day and found a locksmith at our front door. When I asked what was happening, the man explained he was making a copy of our house keys for the in-laws as Mrs. Lambert requested. That night, I had a serious conversation with Sarah about boundaries. "I am uncomfortable with your parents having unrestricted access to our home," I explained calmly. "I think we need to establish some..." "Ungrateful," she interrupted, eyes flashing. "That is what you are being right now. My parents have done nothing but try to help us, offer advice, improve our lives. And all you do is criticize and complain." "Sarah, I appreciate their interest, but this is our home. Our marriage." "My home," she corrected, stunning me into silence. "My parents helped us get this place after all." I was too shocked by this revision of history to correct her. When had she begun believing that her parents had financially contributed to our house? Had they told her this directly, or just implied it so often she had come to accept it as truth? Over the next few months, I noticed Douglas and Margaret referring to our house as Sarah's home or our daughter's place in conversation. When I attempted to gently correct them, they would exchange knowing looks, as if humoring me. "Of course you contributed too," Adam Margaret would say, condescendingly. "Every little bit helps." It was becoming clear that my marriage was being systematically undermined, and my wife was either complicit or being manipulated by her controlling parents. Either way, I was losing the partner I had fallen in love with, and our home was becoming a battleground I had not agreed to fight on. 6 months after the Thanksgiving disaster, the situation had deteriorated significantly. Douglas and Margaret were now visiting 3 or 4 times a week, often arriving unannounced while I was at work. I would come home to find them comfortably settled in our living room, making plans with Sarah, as if they lived there too. One afternoon, I arrived home to find Douglas walking through our backyard with 2 men in suits carrying clipboards. When I approached and introduced myself, Douglas barely acknowledged me. "Just discussing some necessary renovations," he said dismissively. "This yard has so much untapped potential." "What kind of renovations?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. I was not aware we were planning any outdoor projects. "Sarah mentioned wanting a pool," one of the contractors replied. "Mr. Wilson here has some excellent ideas for a complete backyard transformation." I nodded politely while seething inside. Sarah and I had specifically discussed not wanting a pool just months earlier. When I found her later and asked about this, she shrugged. "Daddy thinks it would add value to the property," she said, as if that explained everything. "Besides, I have changed my mind." A pool would be lovely for entertaining. The pattern continued and worsened. I would enter rooms to find Sarah and her parents in deep conversation that immediately halted when I appeared. They would exchange meaningful glances before Margaret would change the subject to something trivial. One evening, while looking for a document in Sarah's home office, I found brochures for expensive private schools in neighborhoods near her parents' estate, more than an hour from our home. When I asked Sarah about them, she became defensive. Mom thought I should look into options for the future. The best schools have waiting lists years long. We have not even decided to have children yet, I pointed out. And we have never discussed moving to your parents' neighborhood. Sarah avoided my eyes. We should keep our options open. While I was away on a 3-day business trip, Margaret took it upon herself to redecorate our entire bedroom and bathroom. I returned to find our personal space, transformed my simple, comfortable bedding, replaced with ornate duvets and pillows, my reading chair gone, and the bathroom filled with expensive fixtures I had never seen before. "Do you not love it?" Sarah asked excitedly when I stood speechless in our doorway. Mom brought in her designer. It is exactly like the guest suite at their summer house. I tried to be understanding to remember that Sarah had grown up with parents who made decisions for her. But the financial aspects were becoming impossible to ignore. Checking our joint account, I discovered large withdrawals that Sarah could not or would not explain. Just some household expenses, she would say vaguely. Or Mom found this amazing antique piece that would be perfect for the entryway. The breaking point came when I overheard a conversation I was clearly not meant to hear. I had come home quietly nursing a headache and was heading upstairs when I heard Douglas's authoritative voice from the kitchen. "The guest room at our house is all prepared," he was saying. "You can stay as long as you need to, sweetheart. Your mother has already cleared space in her closet for your things. I just need some time to think." Sarah replied, her voice small. "Adam and I have been arguing so much lately, because he is unreasonable," Margaret interjected. "Controlling men always are. Remember your cousin Judith's first husband. Same situation." My heart pounded as I retreated silently to my car. I drove to my friend Jason's apartment, a lawyer who had helped with my house purchase. Over beers, I confided my fears. "They are trying to separate us," I concluded after explaining everything. "But legally, where do I stand with the house Sarah thinks her parents helped buy it?" Jason's expression was grim. "Since you are the sole owner on the deed, the house is legally yours. But Adam, this sounds like more than a real estate issue. Your marriage is being systematically undermined." The next day, checking Sarah's phone, while she showered something I had never done before and felt terrible about, I found text messages between her and her mother discussing divorce lawyers and options for moving forward. When Sarah announced she needed space and would be staying with her parents for a week, I was devastated, but not surprised. Her communication during that week was cold and formal, clearly scripted by her parents. My attempts to schedule marriage counseling were rejected with various excuses. "My schedule is too busy right now. I am not comfortable with strangers knowing our private business. Counseling is for couples with real problems, not just different priorities." When she returned home, it was with a typed list of relationship adjustments that might as well have had Douglas and Margaret's letterhead on it. The demands included putting the house in Sarah's name for fairness, giving her parents their own key and security code, and restructuring our finances so Sarah had appropriate autonomy over household decisions. That night, over a tense dinner, Sarah admitted what I had suspected for months. "My parents never thought you were good enough for me," she said almost apologetically, "but they are willing to accept you if you demonstrate that you value me properly. And transferring the house to your name would demonstrate that," I asked quietly. She nodded, not meeting my eyes. "It would be a good first step. After all, it should be half mine anyway." I did not respond. There was nothing left to say. 3 days later, I returned home early from work after receiving a strange text from our neighbor about moving trucks at our house. As I turned onto our street, my stomach dropped. There were indeed 2 large moving vans parked in our driveway, with uniformed workers carrying furniture and boxes out of our home. When I attempted to use my key in the front door, it did not work. The locks had been changed. I knocked, then rang the doorbell repeatedly, growing increasingly alarmed. Finally, a mover answered the door. Sorry, sir, this is a private residence, he said, blocking the entrance. This is my residence, I replied, trying to remain calm. I live here. I own this house. The mover looked uncomfortable and called over his shoulder, Mr. Wilson, someone here claims he lives here. Douglas appeared in the foyer, his expression smug. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. Adam, you have saved us the trouble of contacting you. Your things are being packed separately. He gestured dismissively toward a small pile of boxes on the lawn. What is going on? I demanded, trying to step past him. Why are there moving trucks at my house? Where is Sarah? This is no longer your concern, Douglas stated coldly, physically blocking my entry. Sarah has decided to make this her permanent home without you in it. We are helping her reorganize. Before I could respond, Margaret emerged from the house carrying a box of what appeared to be my books. When she saw me, she dropped the box unceremoniously onto the lawn, spilling the contents. Get out now, you pathetic excuse for a husband, she screamed her carefully, maintained socialite composure, completely gone. This belongs to our daughter now. You cannot do this, I said, struggling to maintain my composure, as neighbors began to emerge from their homes, curious about the commotion. This is legally my house. I own it. Douglas laughed condescendingly. Nice try. We have the paperwork from when W.E. helped Sarah buy this house. Your name might be on some documents as her husband, but make no mistake, this is Wilson family property. Margaret began grabbing more of my belongings, clothes, shoes, even framed photos of my parents, and tossing them onto the growing pile on the lawn. One frame shattered the glass, cutting through a photo of my late grandfather. I looked up to see Sarah watching from an upstairs window, her expression unreadable. When our eyes met, she quickly stepped back from view. Sarah, I called out. Please come down and talk to me. She does not want to speak to you. Douglas snarled, stepping closer until we were almost nose to nose. My daughter has finally come to her senses about the mistake she made marrying you. Consider yourself lucky we are not suing you for attempted financial exploitation. I felt a strange calm settle over me as the reality of the situation became crystal clear. These entitled people truly believed they were reclaiming something that belonged to them. The depth of their delusion and Sarah's complicity was staggering. If you do not leave immediately, Douglas threatened, poking a finger into my chest, I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. Actually, I said quietly, pulling out my phone, I think I will call them first. Douglas laughed again, louder this time, playing to the audience of neighbors who had gathered on the sidewalk. Some had their phones out recording the confrontation. Go ahead, call them. They will escort you off the property. With steady hands, I dialed 911, maintaining eye contact with Douglas the entire time. Yes, hello. I need to report trespassers who have broken into my home, changed the locks, and are currently removing property without permission. They are becoming aggressive and threatening. As I gave the dispatcher our address, Douglas's face began to redden. Margaret continued her tirade now, throwing smaller items from my home office at my feet, my external hard drive, a signed baseball from my childhood desk accessories. These people, I continued calmly to the dispatcher, are my estranged wife's parents. They have no legal right to be in my home or to remove anything from it. The deed is solely in my name, and I have documentation to prove ownership. At the mention of the deed, Douglas's expression shifted from anger to uncertainty for the first time. Margaret paused mid-throw, a leather portfolio containing my citizenship certificates in her hand. They will be here shortly. Thank you, I concluded, ending the call. Officers are on their way. I suggest you stop destroying my property now, as you will be liable for damages. You are bluffing, Douglas said, but his voice lacked the confidence of moments before. This house belongs to our daughter. Actually, I replied, walking to my car to retrieve my briefcase. It does not. Not legally. And I can prove it. For the next 10 minutes, we remained in a tense standoff. Douglas made several calls, speaking in hushed, urgent tones to someone who seemed to be giving him unwelcome information. Margaret continued muttering threats and insults, but had stopped throwing my possessions. Sarah remained hidden inside. When 2 police cruisers pulled up, I felt a wave of relief. 4 officers approached, Taking in the scene with professional caution, "I am Adam Lambert," I said, stepping forward. "I called about trespassers in my home. He is lying." Margaret shrieked before the officers could respond. "This is our daughter's home. He is the trespasser." The senior officer whose nameplate read Rodriguez raised his hand for silence. "One at a time, please." "Sir, you claim to own this property?" "Yes, officer," I replied, opening my briefcase and removing the deed and related paperwork. "Here is the deed solely in my name. I also have the original purchase agreement property tax statements in my name only and homeowner's insurance documentation. My wife's parents have broken in, changed the locks without my knowledge or consent, and are removing property without permission." Officer Rodriguez examined the documents carefully while his partner separated Douglas and Margaret, who were both trying to speak over each other. After confirming the details with dispatch, Officer Rodriguez handed the papers back to me. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson," he said firmly, "turning to my in-laws according to county records, this house is indeed solely owned by Adam Lambert. You have no legal right to be here without his permission, nor to remove any property or change locks. I am going to have to ask you to leave the premises immediately." The color drained from Douglas's face. Margaret gasped, dramatically clutching her pearls. "But our daughter," she sputtered. "Sarah lives here," she told us. "Is Sarah Lambert your daughter?" Officer Rodriguez asked. "Yes," Douglas said stiffly. "She is inside." Another officer went to the door and knocked firmly. After a moment, Sarah appeared looking pale and confused. "Mrs. Lambert," the officer asked, "we need to clarify something. Did you give your parents permission to change the locks and remove property from this house?" Sarah looked from the officer to her parents to me, panic evident in her eyes. They said they were helping me reorganize. I did not know about changing the locks." "Mrs. Lambert, are you aware that according to county records this house is solely owned by your husband?" Officer Rodriguez asked directly. Sarah's eyes widened as she looked at me in disbelief. "That is not possible. My parents helped us buy this house." "Right, Dad." She turned to Douglas, who had the decency to look uncomfortable. "I never said we directly provided the funds," he said carefully. "I said we helped secure the property. Through our connections. Your husband is the legal owner," Officer Rodriguez confirmed. "Now I need everyone to calm down. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, you need to leave this property immediately. The movers need to return everything they have loaded, and we will need a locksmith to restore Mr. Lambert's access to his home." "This is outrageous," Margaret cried. "We were protecting our daughter from this opportunist." "Ma'am," Officer Rodriguez said sternly, "you can leave voluntarily, or we can charge you with breaking and entering property damage and attempted theft. Your choice." Douglas finally seemed to grasp the severity of the situation. He placed a restraining hand on Margaret's arm. "We will go. But this is not over." "Actually," I said, my voice steady, as I surveyed the damaged items on my lawn, "I would like to press charges for the property damage and illegal entry. And I want it documented that my personal belongings have been damaged." As the officers began taking statements and photographs of the damaged property, I watched Sarah's expression change from confusion to embarrassment to anger, though I could not tell if that anger was directed at her parents or at me. The movers, caught in an uncomfortable situation, began returning items to the house under police supervision. A locksmith was called to replace the locks again, with instructions to provide me with the only keys. Throughout the process, Douglas and Margaret protested, threatened lawsuits, and attempted to pull rank by dropping names of judges and city officials they knew. The officers remained professional but firm. They were trespassing and had broken the law. When it was time for them to leave, Sarah faced her most difficult moment yet. "Sarah, come on," Margaret commanded. "Get your things. You are coming home with us." Sarah looked torn, glancing between her parents and me, between the luxury car waiting to whisk her away to her childhood mansion, and the more modest home we had built together. "Mrs. Lambert," Officer Rodriguez said gently, "you can certainly go with your parents if you choose to, but to be clear, you would need your husband's permission to return to this property, as he is the legal owner." In that moment, I saw a flash of the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who thought for herself, who valued substance over show. "I think I need to stay and talk to my husband," she said quietly, alone. Douglas opened his mouth to object, but Officer Rodriguez stepped forward. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, it is time for you to leave." As the police escorted my in-laws to their car, Sarah turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "You own the house completely. Why did not you tell me?" "Let us go inside," I said tiredly. "We have a lot to talk about." 6 months have passed since that surreal day on my front lawn. The house is quieter now, renovated once again, this time to my preferences. The garish gold fixtures Margaret installed have been replaced with clean, modern designs. The walls are painted in calm neutrals, rather than the bold colors she insisted would make a statement. I filed a restraining order against Douglas and Margaret after they made multiple attempts to contact me and gain access to the property. The judge granted it quickly after reviewing the police report and viewing neighbors' video footage of their behavior. Sarah initially moved back with her parents, convinced that I had somehow deceived her throughout our marriage. For the first month, she sent formal emails written in language that clearly came from expensive divorce attorneys. I responded only with facts, never emotion. During that time, I focused on healing. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in relationships affected by manipulative family dynamics. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during my marriage, finding comfort in their unwavering support. At work, I threw myself into challenging projects, earning another promotion. The most surprising turn came 3 months after the incident, when Sarah requested a meeting at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. She arrived alone, looking different somehow. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup her mother preferred. Instead, she wore simple jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. "I owe you an apology," she began without preamble. A real one, not the scripted versions my parents had me sending before. Over the next 2 hours, Sarah revealed the extent of her parents' manipulation, not just of our marriage, but of her entire life. Since childhood, they had controlled every aspect of her existence, from friends to education to career choices. Their approval had been the currency she lived by, and disappointing them had never been an option. "When I met you," she explained, "I felt true freedom for the first time. But they knew exactly how to reel me back in with guilt, with fear, with conditional love." Sarah had begun seeing her own therapist, who helped her recognize the patterns of control and manipulation that had defined her relationships. For the first time, she was setting boundaries with her parents, which resulted in them cutting off her access to family funds, another control tactic. "I got a job," she said with a hint of pride. "Nothing fancy, just administrative work at a small nonprofit. But it is mine. I earned it without my last name or my parents' connections." I listened without interruption, not yet ready to forgive, but willing to understand. When she asked if we could try counseling together, I agreed with caution. The counseling process was difficult, uncovering layers of miscommunication and revealing how Douglas and Margaret had systematically inserted themselves into every aspect of our marriage. Sarah's journey of setting boundaries with her parents was even more challenging. They attempted to regain control through guilt, financial manipulation, and even health scares that later proved to be exaggerated. When these tactics failed, they simply pretended she did not exist, telling their social circle she was finding herself in Europe, rather than admitting she had chosen her husband over them. The decision about whether to rebuild our marriage or move forward separately was not made quickly or easily. Trust once broken does not mend overnight. But through months of honest conversation and professional guidance, we found a path forward, one with clear boundaries, transparent communication, and mutual respect. I learned that standing firm in my truth was not selfish, but necessary. By refusing to participate in the manipulation, I had ultimately freed not only myself but Sarah as well. The peace that comes from removing toxic influences, regardless of family titles or social expectations, has been worth every difficult moment. As for the house that started it all, we still live in it though now. Sarah knows its true history and appreciates the years of sacrifice and planning that went into its purchase. We have redecorated together, creating a home that truly reflects both of us. No outside influences allowed. The most valuable lesson from this experience was understanding that self-worth cannot be determined by others, no matter how loudly they proclaim their opinions. True relationships, whether family, romantic, or friendship, must be built on mutual respect and healthy boundaries. Have you ever had to stand up to someone who tried to control your life or relationship? Leave a comment below and share your experience. Your story might help someone else find the courage to set necessary boundaries. Do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to hear this message today. Remember, you deserve relationships that lift you up, not tear you down. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the strength to always honor your truth.